I must say, for a game that I didn't really seem too interested when I first saw this game like over a year ago, this may end up actually having been the best game I've played all year so far. Well, what's up, again, guys? Brian here, D3 Topics Game here to share a few of my official 3GG game review for the latest game that I've actually had a chance to beat in the form of Stellar Blade. Had a great time with this one, and I do apologize that this review is a bit later than most, but I've been kind of just busy with multiple different projects, so now that I finally had time to actually record my voiceovers and then actually film the actual review, now it's finally out, so I do apologize. Now, if you do happen to enjoy this review by the end, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to track me on my future videos. And remember, if you guys have any ideas for future reviews or rankings or discussion videos, make sure you let me know in the comments down below as well. And like always, thank you guys for watching, and let's get started with my review of Stellar Blade by going over its story. The main story for Stellar Blade takes place on Earth in the distant future, and most of humanity has been driven off of Earth by a dangerous species known as Nativas. To reclaim their home, a place known as the Colonies sends in elite units of combatants to battle the Nativas. Our main protagonist, going by the name Eve, is a member of the Colony's defense force and is sent down to Earth with the 7th Airborne Squad. After witnessing the last of her squad mates be killed by some powerful creatures known as Alpha Nativas, Eve joins up with 2 survivors going by the names Adam and Lily, and the 3 make their way to the last surviving human city known as Zion. It is there that Eve meets an old man named Oracle, who informs her that to complete her mission, Eve must travel to 4 different locations and defeat the remaining Alpha Nativas and collect their cores. When the 4 cores are combined, they create a Master Core which will grant Eve access to the Elder Nativa, and when the Elder Nativa is defeated, humanity will be saved. Now, overall, I think the overall story for Stellar Blade is a good one, just not a great one. I think that when it came to the cast of characters, primarily the primary 3 one, I don't think the game did a very impressive job of actually getting us to actually not only get us to know the characters, but to actually give them much progression. When it comes to the main 3, I felt that out of all of them, I thought that Lily was by far the best character. She certainly had the most energy, and she even at one point, if you do enough in the game, has her own unique storyline that kind of gives you a little bit more backstory into what motivates her to kind of do what she does. And when it comes to the character of Adam, this guy was very, very boring, and you could easily tell that the game wasn't really doing too much with him, and then when you actually get to the end and kind of find out what he's all about, it kind of comes out of nowhere. There's no build up to it, there's no hint of it, so I just kind of felt like they just kind of threw it in there to just throw kind of some random curveball, but I really wasn't too impressed with what they actually did with him by the end of the game. Now, when it comes to Eve, to be the primary protagonist, I did find it a little bit disappointing that her character, for the most part, was kind of monotoned. It made me kind of question exactly what she was. Like, was she human? Was she part cyborg? Was she a mixture of both? It's never exactly made entirely clear. And I felt like maybe that is why her personality played out the way that it was. Because there were certainly a number of moments where it felt like she was being a little bit more emotional. And I think, for me personally, those were some of the more higher moments, because it definitely showed a level of progression. The problem is that there weren't enough moments of that. I would say over the course of the 20 plus hours that it took me to beat Stellar Blade for the first time, there's really only 1 or 2 moments that I actually felt real, genuine character development and emotion coming from Eve, and I just wish that the game had actually had more moments like that. And if they do a Stellar Blade 2, I would definitely suspect that there is a major character change or difference between how she would be in a sequel game and how she is in this game. Outside of that, they don't really even spend a lot of time building any of the other characters outside the primary 3. I think that the character of Oracle was okay, but he was just more for information dump. His bodyguard looked really, really cool, but again, no personality, and we don't get to know much about him. And even some of the side characters outside of that are part of the side missions aren't really given much of a presence. So I think overall, I think that the game really would have benefited by having a lot more, how do I say, if it explored the world a little bit more and made a number of elements outside of the primary 3 characters that you do stick with be much more memorable. Outside of that, I think the story was just kind of serviceable, but there really aren't too many factors of that I thought were very memorable or things that I'm going to be thinking about a couple weeks from now. When it comes to its gameplay, Stellar Blade could be described as an action-adventure RPG title set on a post-apocalyptic Earth with an extensive set of maps to explore with some impressive fast-paced combat. The combat style will require you to perform powerful combos while learning the attack patterns of a large variety of different enemies. Knowing when to dodge attacks and counter their precise timing will be a key factor that players will need to develop if you wish to survive in some of the more difficult encounters that you come across over the course of the game. One of Eve's strongest abilities is her beta gauge that will fill up when you successfully parry and evade attacks in combat. When the beta gauge fills up enough, you'll be able to deliver one of Eve's many powerful special attacks. In many scenarios, it is sometimes best to avoid close-range fighting and keep yourself at a distance, and this is where Eve's drone comes into play. The drone comes with a series of different firing modes and can fire multiple different forms of ammunition, and over the course of the game you can collect resources that will allow you to upgrade the performance of your drone. One element that I really appreciate is that Stellar Blade does utilize the PlayStation 5's DualSense controller haptic feedback to deliver vibrations on enemies' attacks and weapon accuracy, and a few other features that I won't spoil here. When it comes to exploration, there are more than 6 distinguished areas that you can explore. While the 2 largest ones are primarily deserts that are empty and are abandoned cities, there are some underground pathways and bunkers that you will have to explore. There are also a series of puzzles spread throughout the game, with some of them being quite creative in my opinion. There's also a great deal of customization that you will have access to over the course of the game. Combatively, you can grant Eve access to many different attachments to her body to improve her performance in battle. As you defeat enemies and earn experience, you will then gain skill points, and you can then use these skill points to teach Eve new abilities across her 5 different skill trees. When it comes to Eve's overall visual look, you can even go so far as to change Eve's hairstyle while having a good amount of different options to choose from. And as far as it has been confirmed as of right now, there are currently 74 different outfits that you can collect over the course of the game, with many only being available in New Game Plus. The New Game Plus mode will not only allow you to replace Stellar Blade on the hardest difficulty if you're looking for an even tougher challenge, but it'll also give you access to even more powerful abilities to unlock, as well as exclusive different alternate suits that you can also pick for Eve to wear. Now, without question, when it comes to Stellar Blade's gameplay, the one thing I absolutely really appreciate that a lot of games don't take into account is that regardless of how much you built up Eve or you developed her as a character and gave her all these different abilities, the game never stopped being challenging. I mean, over the course of the game, you can teach Eve a number of really powerful combos, a lot of OP abilities, and the game stayed very, very consistent. It was very, very challenging. I mean, even when I felt like Eve was extremely powerful, there were still a number of really, really difficult boss fights, especially in the last half of, or I would say like the last third of the game, that really, really tested me. And I had a number of serious close calls. So it kind of required me to actually spend some extra time actually not only learning the patterns, but actually kind of knowing how to approach certain battles. Because when you're encountering one type of battle, it would have been helpful if there was kind of like a hit detection, because I found myself multiple times fighting like one type of enemy out in the middle of one desert, and then out of nowhere, like an enemy would notice like, oh, there's a fight going in. I'm just going to join the fight and not even announce my presence. Then I'll suddenly be getting hit in the back. So I think something like that would have been very, very useful. Another thing I really also appreciated about its gameplay style is just the amount of side missions. Now, this is kind of a double-edged sword because there are a lot of side missions. The problem is that a lot of them are very, very repetitive. They simply ask you to speak to someone in Zion. They'll ask you, hey, can you check on my friend who may be in this specific location? And then you would go to that location and you'd find out, oh, that person's dead. And for like, I'd say like 85% of the missions, that's exactly what it was. It was like, oh, I'm sorry, your friend was killed, so here's this little thing that they had on him, and yeah, I'm sorry for your loss. And I just wish that there were actual really good side missions that were memorable. I would say out of all of the side missions that I did over the course of Stellar Blade, and there were a lot of them, there was only one that was very memorable, and it involved this singer whose body wasn't exactly working. And over the course of, I'd say, 3 side missions, because it's separated into multiple parts, I think 1 or 2 parts, you're kind of asked to kind of get her parts that allow her to be kind of to operate better. And I felt that that was the one side mission that really stuck out to me, and I wish that there had been like 2 or 3 more side missions like that would have been more memorable. And I think that's kind of the one thing about Stellar Blade side missions I think is kind of disappointing, is that all of them are so repetitive. And so I kind of felt like if you're going to add all these side missions, I think there needs to be a much higher variety of them that actually gives you important information that will stick with you. And I just think that even for extended time period, I think Stellar Blade could have done a much better job in that department. When it comes to Stellar Blade's visuals, this game is absolutely beautiful to look at, with a great amount of work having been done on the individual maps to grant each of them all a level of similarities that makes them all feel like they belong in the same world, while having enough that grants each of them an individual style to allow them to feel very distinctive and have their own unique identity. The enemy designs are also quite unique, and the visuals during combat are very clean despite its speed. I also really enjoyed all of the Easter eggs to other popular franchises that Stellar Blade was able to smoothly integrate into its game without even noticing. But I really need to give a major shout out to the game's awesome soundtrack. On some level, I easily would compare Stellar Blade's soundtrack to something like Metal Gear Rising, another incredible fast-paced hack-and-slash game which action is greatly enhanced by its awesome soundtrack to help enhance the moments. Now, in conclusion, when I compare Stellar Blade to the prior 3 games I've played this year in the form of Rise of Ronin, South Park Snow Day, and Helldivers, Stellar Blade is by far the most complete game that I've played this year, and I would say up to this point is by far my primary choice that I would pick for Game of the Year, and hopefully something comes out later on in the year that can hopefully challenge Stellar Blade, but I would say it is the most complete game. It's a fun game to play. I'm absolutely happy that it kind of reminds me a lot of Metal Gear Rising, although I think Metal Gear Rising is a little bit better because it connects to a franchise that I actually care about, while Stellar Blade is a new franchise, and I really do hope that they continue on with a second Stellar Blade somewhere down the road. I think anyone who's curious about this will have a pretty fun time. Again, I think the soundtrack is absolutely incredible. I think the action and combat is very, very impressive. I think the visuals are absolutely amazing. I love the use of the haptic feedback. Anytime a game incorporates the haptic feedback from the PlayStation 5 controller, that's a major plus for me. And I think that overall, it's just a great game. And I think it does somewhat, in some sense, live up to the hype, especially since this was a brand new franchise that came really out of nowhere and was originally a game that I was just kind of curious about. But heck, after playing it and beating and now starting my second playthrough in New Game Plus, I can certainly say that, yeah, this game is absolutely well worth your money. And if you're looking for a new action game to add to your library, this would be a good choice to pick. For my final score, Stellar Blade gets an 8 out of 10. And that'll do it for my review of Stellar Blade. Now, if you also had a chance to play this game on your own before seeing my review, I would love for you to share your thoughts and score-wise what would you give Stellar Blade. Share your thoughts with me and everyone else in the comments down below. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you all next time.